This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. I've made a ton of videos on this channel where I talk about tips and tricks, things that your iPhone can do that you might not know about. And one area that usually gets at least one or two mentions in each of those videos is the accessibility menu. Accessibility is the part of the iPhone that's designed to ensure that everyone, regardless of their personal ability or needs, can get the most out of their iPhone. But I think because of that, a lot of people don't spend time checking the accessibility menu of their devices out, because it really is a gem, with loads of settings and features worth considering. So in this video, I'm going to talk through my favorite accessibility features and functions, show you what they do and how to set them up, and then you can consider whether any of them might be helpful to you. Okay, let's get into it. One of the best features of the iPhone is the ability to pinch and push to zoom in and out on the screen, and that's especially useful if you find viewing things on your iPhone difficult. You can zoom in on a picture, for example, to view it more closely. Trouble is, this only works on certain parts of the iOS user interface, text, for example, or photos, but not everything. If you find yourself often needing to zoom in on parts of iOS where zooming isn't typically supported, you might want to activate the Magnify Content function. To do this, go to Settings, then Accessibility, then Zoom, and ensure that it's toggled on. With this enabled, double tap on the screen with 3 fingers to enable the magnification box. It's got this little pill-shaped button at the bottom of it, and you can use your finger to move the box around the screen by tapping and holding there. Double tap with 3 fingers again to remove the zoom. Notice down at the bottom of the setting for this that you can choose how much zoom you'd like to apply when you enable this, going all the way up to a 15 times zoom, so hopefully you can find a level that suits you and your vision. You can also enable a function called Smart Typing. If I switch this on, watch what happens if I go to Messages, for example. I'm in a new message and I want to type a message out to someone, so my cursor is here in the message box, but the text as I type is very small. If I double tap with 3 fingers on the screen to enable zoom, the phone recognizes that I'm working with a keyboard, and so it zooms into the message box and follows the text as I'm writing, but without magnifying the keyboard. So I can type away quite happily, clearly seeing what I'm typing, and then when I'm done, just double tap with 3 fingers again to return to the normal messages view. This is one of those accessibility functions that most people I speak to have absolutely no idea about, and yet it feels like some kind of magic. Just like your iPhone can be configured to constantly listen out for its voice assistant trigger phrase, I'll write it on the screen now so as not to enable your voice assistant, your phone can also be configured to listen out for specific sounds. The iPhone has incredibly capable microphones built into it, and these microphones can, with your permission of course, listen out for sounds that you might find difficult to hear yourself, but that you'd like to be alerted to if picked up. For example, a dog barking, or a doorbell chiming, or glass breaking, or a baby crying. There's a whole range of sounds that your iPhone recognizes and can identify and alert you to. To enable this function, head into Settings, then Accessibility, then Sound Recognition, and toggle it on. Your iPhone might have to download some software update files for this, but the files are pretty small, a few megabytes I think. You can then choose which sounds you'd like your phone to listen out for, and you can even choose a custom tone for different sounds if you wish. Now look, I can already visualize the comments section of this video where I've got a ton of people saying something like, "I won't let my iPhone listen to me," and fair enough. You are of course going to have to trust that Apple are going to be responsible when you allow your iPhone to constantly listen out for sounds. Apple do have a really good track record when it comes to user privacy, but if that's a deal breaker for you, you might not want to enable this function. But if you're okay with it, and a second pair of ears listening out for something important sounds good to you, why not try this feature? Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to mention the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. With Squarespace, building your own website is quick and easy, regardless of what you want it for, whether it's to blog about your hobby, or to generate some interest in your business or side hustle, or even to create a personalized site where prospective employers can view your CV and learn more about you. Squarespace make the entire process of configuring, launching, and managing your own website easy. Their best-in-class templates cover an enormous range of website themes and use cases, and they're unbelievably easy to customize. I was able to get my template tweaked just how I like it within a matter of minutes. Every Squarespace website and online store comes with a host of integrated SEO features and useful guides to ensure you've got the best chance of visibility in the search engines, and you can even set up things like an online store where you can sell physical or digital products. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/properhonesttech to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain, or use the code properhonesttech. If you've purchased an iPhone Max model, and keep in mind that the upcoming iPhone 14 apparently has 2 Max models in the range, you're using a pretty enormous iPhone, all things considered. Even the iPhone 13 Pro, the one that I use, is pretty big, especially if you've got quite small hands. Assuming that you hold your iPhone with one hand, a movement that you'll often need to do is getting your thumb up to the top of the screen, as this is usually where the back button is located on most apps. Twitter, for example. If I'm on Twitter, I have to do this literally each time I go into a tweet, then want to come back out to return to my feed. It's a stretch and it's uncomfortable. But there's an accessibility feature that you can enable to help with this, and it's called Reachability. To enable this, head to Settings, then Accessibility, then Touch, and ensure that Reachability is toggled on. Now, to make this work, you have to do a little swipe gesture downwards in the bottom part of your screen. I'd say if you do this around the bottom 1/8 of your screen, that should generally work. It takes practice to get this to work, but honestly, after a few attempts, repeating this until I felt like I knew exactly where to swipe, it becomes muscle memory. And if you're using your phone one-handed but struggle to reach the top of the screen, this is a bit of a game changer. This is probably the most well-known accessibility function out there, and for good reason. It's a really clever use of the iPhone's touch sensitivity and opens up options that I think most people could find a use case for. Essentially, you can configure your iPhone to recognize a double or triple tap on the rear of the phone and respond with a function. To enable this, head to Settings, then Accessibility, then Touch, and then scroll down to the bottom and ensure that Backtap is enabled. You can set this for both a double tap of the rear of the phone and a triple tap, and my advice would be to experiment to find whatever works best for you. In my experience, double tap can be activated a bit too easily on occasion, but you might not find this, so have a play around with it. If I tap into the double tap option, you can see that there are a number of functions that I can assign to the double tap. You can assign system functions like taking a screenshot, accessing the camera, activating Siri. There's a whole host of things to choose from here. Below that, you have accessibility functions like activating VoiceOver or Zoom. Below that, you have scrolling down the screen and scrolling up the screen. And then below that, you've got shortcuts. Your section here will look different to mine, as this is literally accessing the shortcuts that you've got set up within your Shortcuts app, and that's going to be different for everyone. If you'd like an introduction to the Shortcuts app, I've made an entire video about that subject, which I'll link to in the description of this one. For the sake of illustration, let's keep it simple. Let's choose Screenshot. With that enabled, I'm going to come out of Settings, and here on the home screen, I'm going to double tap the back of my iPhone with my index finger, and a screenshot is taken. Now, one thing to mention is that cases, like the one I've got here, this is a super strong carbon fiber case, these can impact the effectiveness of this particular hack. Essentially, your case can be so good at reducing shock to the phone that it can make it so that the phone doesn't recognize the taps very well, which is a good thing overall, but you'll need to experiment with your phone and case, and also consider switching to triple tap. Sometimes that can actually work better in those kind of situations. A lesser known accessibility function is the ability to lock your phone into a specific app. I've found that people either don't know about this one, or they've looked at it and deemed it too complicated to use, and it really isn't, as I'll now show you. Let's start by going to Settings, then Guided Access, and toggling it on. Under passcode settings, you either input a PIN that you'll use to enable and disable this feature, and obviously it should be a PIN that only you know, or you can usually enable things like Touch ID or Face ID if your phone has those options. Notice this button a bit further down, which we're going to want to toggle on, Accessibility Shortcut. It says here that by tapping the side button here on my iPhone 13 Pro will enable guided access, so that's what we're going to do. I'm then going to open a game on my iPhone, and with the game open, I'm going to triple tap the side button and choose guided access. Down here at the bottom left, we've got some options. I can choose whether to enable or disable any of the following: the side button, the volume buttons, motion, the keyboards, touch on the touchscreen, and set a time limit. You can see that I've disabled the side button, the volume buttons, and haven't set a time limit, but I've left motion, keyboards, and touch enabled. I'm then going to press Start up at the top right and input the pin I'd like to use. The game, Solitaire in this case, is totally playable, but notice if I try and swipe away from the app to go back to the home screen, the phone won't let me. The side button also doesn't work, so I can't lock the phone. I also can't change the volume because I chose to lock that out. There are multiple use cases here, but I'd imagine that for many parents or carers, this would be a great tool to know when giving your phone to a child or someone who you don't want to be able to access things outside of the game or app that you've set them up in. You can literally lock your phone down so that the person can have full access to whatever you've given them access to, but they can't go reading your messages or purchasing things on Amazon, for example. When you're done, triple tap on the side button, then input your PIN and choose End. The phone now returns to normal operation. The iPhone makes really good use of swipe-based gestures, things like being able to swipe down from the top of the screen to access Control Center, for example, where you can then access a wealth of helpful iPhone features. But some people find the reliance on swiping challenging, and if that sounds like you should definitely check out Assistive Touch. Head into Settings, then Accessibility, then Touch, and then toggle Assistive Touch on. You'll see this little button appear toward the bottom of your screen, which you can move around by pressing and holding it, then dragging it around as you need to. This button is a constantly on your screen smart button that you can customize to give you access to pretty much anything that you need. So for example, if I tap on mine, you can see that I've got quick access to the notification center. I can take a screenshot, I can access Siri, I can go to the home screen, I can access the control center, and I've got some device related functions here. Pressing on that, I can lock the screen, change the volume, unmute the device, rotate the screen, and if I tap into more, there's even more functions, like the ability to restart the phone or access Apple Pay. The back arrow will take you back. Now I said that you can customize this, and the way that you would do that is by tapping into Assistive Touch. Then, for example, if you tap into Customize Top Level Menu, you can select items in here and then change them. For example, if I don't want Siri, I could tap on that and then choose something else. You can even choose shortcuts, and if you know anything about shortcuts, you'll know that you can customize them to do pretty much anything on your phone. If you don't know anything about shortcuts, be sure to check out my Intro to Shortcuts video. In Custom Actions, you can specify what the Assistive Touch button should do with a single tap, a double tap, and a long press. You can even create your own gestures in Create New Gesture. Then, so long as you've got custom enabled as one of the button options in your Assistive Touch menu, you can then input that custom gesture and assign it to an action. This is a really handy menu if some of the more traditional methods of interacting with your iPhone don't really work for you. By the way, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, you might be interested in my weekly newsletter, The Proper Weekly. I cover tech news that I found interesting that week, behind the scenes on what's happening here on the channel, and a tip for a device in the Apple ecosystem. It's free to join, and I'll include a link for it in the description of this video. If you own a pair of AirPods as well as your iPhone, you can enable a function called Live Listen. This is where your iPhone essentially becomes a portable microphone that relays back to your AirPods. So if, for example, you're out for a meal in a noisy restaurant and you're struggling to hear the person that you're with, you could position your iPhone close to them and use the AirPods to allow you to better hear what they're saying. It's no replacement for dedicated listening aids, of course, but it is a good feature to have. There's 2 steps to enabling this. First, head to Settings, then Control Center, and ensure that Hearing has been selected. If it's not in this menu up here at the top, you'll need to scroll down until you see it, then press the green plus icon to add it to your control center. Then, with your AirPods connected to your device, open Control Center and tap the hearing icon, then enable Live Listen. You should then be able to hear through the iPhone's microphone. Siri is a very capable voice assistant. It might not be as capable as its competition, but it's good and it's getting better all the time. I'm sure you already know how to activate it, and you can use it to achieve a number of things on your iPhone. Do check out my Siri videos if you've not already. But some people find communicating with Siri challenging, and if that sounds like you might prefer the option of typing your requests to Siri instead. That way, instead of saying something like, "What's the weather going to be like tomorrow?" you could just instead type "weather tomorrow" and you'd get the same result. But you need to enable this. head to Settings, then Accessibility, then Siri, and enable Type to Siri. Then when you press and hold the side button, instead of Siri listening out for you to say something, you'll type in the text box instead. When you hit Done, that's the same as stopping speaking, and your voice assistant will respond accordingly. This is a really handy feature if you struggle with reading content on your iPhone. You can have your iPhone speak content to you. To enable this, head to Settings, then Accessibility, then Spoken Content. There are two options to choose from here, and I'd advise you to try out both and see how you get on with them based on your use case. Speak Screen will literally speak out the entire contents of a screen to you, but the problem with that is that it will not only speak the content of your article, for example, but it will also include every single link or button, including the text behind the links and buttons. It can get a bit much, especially on busy websites. If you do choose to enable this, I'd recommend that you also enable Speech Controller, this little side option that gives you playback controls whilst you're listening to the spoken content. What might be better for most people is Speak Selection. With this, you first select the text that you'd like speaking out to you in the standard way that you select text on iOS, then tap Speak when it shows in the menu above. Your iPhone will then speak just the content that you've selected out to you.
You probably heard the plea for a deal with God sometime this summer. Perhaps you'd encountered Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill years before.
Now obviously, I wouldn't recommend this for having an entire audiobook narrated to you, but if what you're after is a quick way to have the contents of a website or a short article narrated to you, this could actually be really helpful. VoiceOver is pretty much what it sounds like, an audio aid to help you understand what's happening on your phone if you find seeing what's happening on your phone difficult. When the VoiceOver function is enabled, tapping on a button or an app on your phone will result in your phone announcing whatever you just pressed, so you know where your fingers are in relation to your screen, and you can then double tap in the same place to open the app or activate the function that you pressed. To enable it, head to System Preferences, then Accessibility, and toggle VoiceOver on. You'll get a warning from your phone before you do this, and that's because this is a pretty significant accessibility feature to switch on, in so much as it really does change the core functionality of your phone, and it can therefore be challenging to switch this off until you've got the hang of it, so you have been warned. But essentially, with this toggled on, when you tap on, say, the camera app, whereas with this function switched off, your iPhone would open the camera app, with VoiceOver switched on, it will instead announce the phrase camera app to you, letting you know what you just tapped on. So if you then realize that you hadn't intended to select the camera, you could keep looking for it. But if you realize that you did want to open the camera, you would double tap in the same place to open it. So there you go, 10 really useful accessibility functions that I think everyone should know about, regardless of their personal ability. At the end of the day, anything that makes your iPhone more usable has to be a good thing, right? What about you? Any accessibility features that you use that I've not included here? Drop me a comment and let me know. And as ever, if you found this video useful, do please consider leaving me a like and subscribing to my channel for more content like this in the future. See you on the next video.